Hey, sports fans, it's Larry Eder with Socialing the Distance. We're with Lewis Johnson, a 10-time NBC Olympic commentator. Lewis, great to see you.
It's great to see you, Larry. I mean, we haven't seen each other at the stadium forever, so why not catch
I
up right
know.
here?
I know. When did you know the pandemic was a serious thing?
I knew that was serious when I was in Las Vegas. We had already done the Marathon Olympic trials, right? Then I went to
Yeah.
Las Vegas for the Pac-12 men's basketball tournament. And we already heard rumblings that some things were going to be canceled other places. And we went to meetings, practices, and then did our first night of games and got a
Yeah.
text message just as those games wrapped up and said, everybody come in tomorrow morning about 9 a.m. We have a meeting. And we kind of knew. We got to the meeting at 9 a.m. They said, we just wanted to tell you in person that the Pac-12 men's basketball tournament is canceled. Go back to your rooms, pack up everything, and go home. And it was like, wow, this is
Wow.
real. So that's when we got the news, went home, and I hadn't worked in almost a year before I did some of the indoor meets here with Paul Doyle and his group.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
craziness. Um, you, I have admired you for a long time. I think you ask great questions. I think a lot of times you get these kids right after they've finished an event, and you know that they can barely breathe.
Oh yeah, of
But
course
you,
I do.
but you figured out how to get something out of them.
Yeah.
Does your running experience play into how you deal with athletes?
Absolutely. And I think it's really important for anybody who's going to be a reporter in the world of business, in the world of sports, to have had an experience as an athlete, because I can remember what it was like for me in training or competition to be tired, winded, what have you. And so I think you use that knowledge and understanding to try to read the athletes, not just for those moments when they're out of breath and can't breathe, but also in those moments where, something great has happened. More importantly, when something bad has happened, how do you respond to them? How do you manage the question, tone of voice? How do you show respect and understanding for that, as well as still remain a journalist that's walking the line without a country, without any favoritism? So I use all of that. And for sometimes, if you see me, I guess when somebody's on the ground, they can't get up. Well, hell, I'll just get down on the ground with them and put the mic over there and let them give their best answer as they can. Why not? Why not?
Now, I understand that you spent some time in Europe. Were you a rabbit in the races for a while too?
Yeah, I rabbited a lot. So when I walked onto the University of Cincinnati track and field team in 1985, that was with no scholarship. I'd walked around for 2 years, completely lost. One of my
Wow.
best friends, Doug Wiseman, we had been in high school track together, kept encouraging me. And finally, I walked on in 85. By 87, I was lucky enough to become a captain and an All-American in the 800 there. 88, I went to the trials in Indianapolis. And then it
Wow.
was that summer, literally that summer, Larry, that I was in a hotel lobby, and Ken Washington, who was a good friend of mine, asked me the fateful question that changed my life. He said, Lewis, he goes, what are you going to do the rest of the summer? I said, I'm going to go back to Cincinnati. I've got a room in the dorm. I'm an RA. I'm going to take a class, that kind of stuff. I said, what are you going to do? So he reaches in his backpack, and man, he pulls out this book, and it was the IAAF guide to all the meets. And I'm looking through this thing and I'm going, what? There are track meets in Zurich and Monaco and Paris. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. We went to another hotel, and about 10 minutes later, I met some organizers. That guy right there, Sandro Giovanelli, all the Italian meets. There's Wilfred Mir, who has the Belgian meets. Walked right over to him, started talking 100 miles an hour. They told me, wait a minute, give me a number. Sure, they were blowing me off. I think it was maybe 3 days later, Wilfred Mir called me in my dorm room. A week later, I was in Brussels, rabbiting my first race. And
Wow.
like a son going to his dad, I walked over to the stands and I said, Mr. Mir, it was I said, how did I do, sir? He said, you did a good job. I want to help you get some more meets. And that was the beginning of a brand new career. And so I rabbited for 7 years, off and on, all over the place. And we just had a great time doing that. And it was great. It was a great athletic experience, and it was a great cultural experience. I love traveling, love people.
Yeah.
Love to dive into culture. I'm not a hotel lobby guy. Let's get out and go see. So it really, really, literally changed my life.
What's the toughest thing about being a rabbit?
The what?
What is the toughest part of being a rabbit?
Yeah, the toughest thing about being a rabbit is having 3 or 4 people with different agendas. So the first person you think about is the person who's paying you, right? So if the meet director says, in this 800, I want you to go through in 50 flat. You go, okay, that's fine. Then you got, somebody else coming over to you back in the day when we were doing the 1500. It might be Saeed Oweda's manager coming over and say, we want you to go through the 800 and this, or, go through the 1,000 and that. And I was going the shorter leg. Ken was going the longer leg. So dealing with the different agendas. But the most important thing was once the gun went off is to make sure you knew what was happening behind you. If I was the only guy in the 800, I needed to make sure that I was trying to run the tempo that they were giving me. And, you can't just fake that. Either you have that inner clock or you don't. And then you also need to be aware of what's happening behind you, because if the gap is too big, then you're wasting your time. You're wasting the organizer's money. So that was kind of the game within the game of doing that. And I loved that. I loved it a lot. It was a lot of fun.
What was your favorite race that you paced or rabbited? Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a favorite. I can just tell you about a favorite location. I mean, okay. I was on a Zoom with some people a couple of nights ago talking about the Olympics and great meets, and Zurich was like the Olympics in one night, because Mr. Brugger had the biggest budget. He had everybody there. I was doing actually an event with we call this Olympic Leaping Legends event that I host every month with Charles Austin, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, Kenny Harrison, Bob Beeman, are the regulars now. And we had Roger. We do that once a month. And so Roger Kingdom was on with us Sunday, and we were talking about the world record that he set there. So it was more about the location of the stadium, and being able to be in those great venues. It was just, Zurich was just unmatchable.
Yeah, I love Zurich. First time I really hung out was the European champs in 2014, and I thought I was in heaven. Yeah. It was just amazing, Yeah. So you go from there, and so how did you begin in broadcasting?
Well, I knew in college, probably my junior year, which was sort of my junior year. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain. I was there and then I left and came back. That I was interested in journalism and the media. I had applied to the television and broadcasting division and didn't get in. And when I started to compete, I was paying attention to what was happening in TV. That first summer when I went to Europe, I was competing and training or what have you. And Johnny Gray came up to me toward the end of the year and he says, me and my coach, Merle McGee, were talking, and we'd like to invite you to come to Santa Monica and train with us. I was like, wow, really? So not to the happiness of my family, I decided with a quarter left in school at Cincinnati that I was going to leave Cincinnati and go to California to LA to train. Yeah. So I went out there. And it was there that I began to get to work behind the scenes. I used to work a lot of games at the Rose Bowl behind the scenes as a runner. So basically on Thursday, I'd go to the ABC lot, pick up a vehicle, and I'd go to the store and I'd buy batteries for all the parabolic mics. I'd buy sodas. I'd buy all these things and help to get the commissary ready. They'd pull the truck in at the Rose Bowl, get all that stuff set up. And the beauty of it, Larry, and I tell anybody who's interested, has an interest in something, is to be around it. So once they got everything set up, I could sit in the control room and watch what they were doing there. Bob Goodrich was the producer. I could go up in the booth and watch Keith Jackson and Bob Greasy do their thing. I could go down on the field and follow Lynn Swann around and watch him do his thing. They didn't know it, but I was looking. And I identified that reporter role. I said, I think this is something I'm interested in doing. So I did that for many years. I even worked the Oscars behind the scenes 3 times, and that was just unbelievable.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm just having these experiences around the media, which helped the believability go up, that I could maybe be in the industry doing something.
How did you get involved in track and field on TV?
Well, that was the first opportunity, really, Larry. That was being, in some odd places, and somebody needed an interview with somebody, and I get a piece of tape here, another piece of tape there, and those pieces of tape would always lead to something. And I got a big break doing the Goodwill Games in St. Petersburg, Russia. I don't know if you were there.
Wow.
Or not. Did you go to that?
No, I did not. I got invited, but I just wasn't able to put it all together. Yeah. That's one I would have loved to have gone to.
Oh, it was unbelievable. I mean, St. Petersburg was just a gem. As an American kid, you never imagined you'd go to Russia, right? So we were there. Yeah. It was beautiful. The Hermitage Museum, Catherine Summer Palace, all the Mariinsky Theater. We saw all these incredible things. And but I was, again, a stage manager for the guys doing the interviews. And we were staying on these boats. There was a bigger ship and there was a smaller boat. And I was on the smaller boat. And I was supposed to go on a tour of the Hermitage. And I walked out of the boat and the van left. I'm like, damn, I missed the van. I said, well, there's a production meeting going on at the other boat. Let me just go over there and see what's going on with that. So I drifted over to that meeting and walked in and sat down, and they began to talk about this 10K race walk that was coming up the next day. And clearly nobody wanted to call the 10K race walk. And so Craig Masback turned and looked and he goes, hold on a second. He goes, I know this guy right here, Lewis Johnson, wants to be a commentator one day. And we've got this other guy here, Ian Brooks, who's done some announcements. Why don't you give the race to them? And I was like, what? So the producer got on the
Wow.
phone, made a call. Next thing I know, we were going to do it. And so I was given a sheet,
Wow.
and three-quarters of the names I couldn't say. And then the next day, Roger Twibo brought us on the air, and he said, "Now for the call of the men's 10K race walk. Here's Ian Brooks and Lewis Johnson." Handed me the headset, and
Wow.
yeah, so we called that 10K, and the last lap came down to this big showdown, and it was Maxim Shafikov and Bernardo Segurio. And I think the Mexican guy threw his hat down right as the last lap started. And that last lap came down, was a big call, and we were screaming and yelling or what have you. And if you remember way back in the day, CNN used to have this thing called the play of the day. And
Yes.
that race final went back to CNN as a play of the day. So I spent all night that night getting that piece of tape, that final lap, transferred from PAL, the language, to NTSC, so I could have that piece of tape. And that got me an interview with ABC Sports to do college basketball and football, and then the rest was history.
That's so cool.
That's where nothing ever happened normal in my career. Nothing has ever happened easy, normal in my career. It's always been something strange, somewhere strange. And I've just embraced that and love it.
Well, talking about things that are strange, Paul Doyle is one of my favorite people, but he is very eccentric, as we know.
Mine too.
This guy has mortgaged his house for what he's believed in, and putting that behind the meets. Suffice to say, with the first meet, he didn't have a lot of greenbacks to put into it, and you guys busted your chops. And I know enough behind the background that, and Sandy put a note up a little while later. You were juggling a lot. You also had a world record in the first 3 minutes of the broadcast, and and I'm watching it. And my girlfriend has seen 2 track meets, me racing in 1976, and I took her to the New Balance indoor, and she's going, "Larry, what's going on? That was was that a world record?" And so I know you're busting your chops. Tell us a little bit about juggling in that first meet and how all your skills were called into that one.
Yeah, that was a challenging meet, and I'm gonna go back to where you started with Paul Doyle. I love his spirit. I love the fact that he has ideas that he brings to life, and that American Track League product, I think, is an excellent product. I worked some of his meets a few years ago outdoor, where he's got the fans that are really around. You got a DJ, you got bringing them down on the field, down on the track for the distance races, the after competition concert, all that stuff. Just doing things differently, giving fans a chance to vote folks into a final. So the format is beautiful, but obviously with the pandemic, you can't have fans in the arena, and his hope was to have 4 different locations, but we went to Arkansas because they were accommodating and just fantastic people there, as always. Arkansas is just awesome. So instead of canceling the meet, he could have canceled, said, "I just can't pull it off." He found a way to get this thing on the air. And, look, there was a production company, a group there that didn't have a lot of experience in that area. And I'm going to tell you something. I work with a lot of people, and I would never criticize the fact that we had issues and problems. What I will honor is the fact that they busted their behinds to try to do the best that they could. But we had technical issues that went down. We lost communication about a minute before the air between the producer and myself. And luckily, they were right down the hall, but they had to run down and talk to me to go to commercial. They couldn't give me any cues about going to the interviews. Nothing. All this stuff went down. So, as you said, within a minute of being on the air, Ryan Krauser throws a world record in the shot. It was wild, and there was it was a challenge. But as a professional, you understand that sometimes when you're in those difficult situations, you can't stop. You can't complain. You can't gripe. You keep moving. And that's what we did. And then Max Siegel, of course, and Adam Schmig at USA Track and Field stepped up big time and came to Paul's aid. And then we brought in production company, Car Hughes Productions, which is just, they're fantastic people and do a great job always. A lot of the production programming that you'll see in track and field across many networks. So they came in and brought it up a level. And with the rest of the meets were just fantastic.
Yeah, I love seeing you and Paul and Otto together. It's just it's really fun. And I want to ask you. So sometimes I'll see you'll have a video that you've done before, and then you bring it in, and then you talk to the athlete. Do you get to make the choices about which athletes you're going to do something kind of special on?
Not necessarily, because the producer is always in charge of the production.
Okay.
We have input for sure. We always communicate, and our people are great. I've been lucky to come up through some excellent producers through the years. Sam Flood obviously was top
Hmm.
notch, and then Rob Hyland came in behind him, who has done so many great events, horse racing, what have you, track and field, and now Betsy is our producer, and we just Betsy Riley. We just have a great time with great people who are very smart and know what we need in terms of star quality and star power and what have you, and storytelling, which is really what we're all about at NBC, right? So whatever those important stories are, maybe we got a little piece of tape that will allow us to not just introduce the name of this person coming up, but then all of a sudden get to this piece of tape, which may be 30 seconds, and then come back out to the race. And then we all try to follow it up with our commentary and or with interview questions to put a button on those stories. So it's a collective effort, but the producer takes the lead as to where we're going with these things, and we follow.
What's the toughest part of covering track and field on TV?
Time, never enough time. Literally. And so when you asked me that original question about talking to athletes when they're out of breath, I can't respond to all the comments on social media about give them a chance to breathe. I get it, but TV is time. So when that race is over, the sequence is this: the race, replays, and while the replays are going, I'm trying to line up this person, and sometimes they need more time. They'll then put the final results up on the graphic and then come to me. So I don't have much time to get them harnessed and try to see if they can breathe, and maybe ask a quick question or so to confirm what I'm thinking is the biggest deal. Sometimes it's obvious. And then boom, the interview's happening and we have to keep moving. So time is always the biggest challenge. And I would say the second biggest challenge is managing extremely emotional moments on big stages. I embrace all that. I've been involved with some moments where it's just devastating. You go from Usain Bolt to the incredible things that he does, or relay who does this and wins a gold, or maybe it's, all kinds of things, to devastating moments. And I always try to remind fans, especially those who love sport, that the biggest difference and the reason the Olympic stage is so incredible is that the NBA, the NFL, March Madness, all these different sports get that big stage every year. Yeah. And the Olympics, you get it every 4 years. That makes the magnitude so much greater, the emotion so much higher. And I can only imagine what it's going to be like if we make it to Tokyo, and I believe we will. I believe we're going to see some unbelievable performances because people have been pinned up, waiting, frustrated, sick. Folks have died. We've had all kinds of things have happened. And we get to that stage in Tokyo, I think we're going to see some amazing performances that will inspire the world. And so time is always the biggest challenge. And then managing the emotion of the tough stories is the second biggest one. But I embrace them all.
You were talking about being a storyteller, and I think that is really one of the greatest things that you do.
I appreciate that.
If you were the head of global athletics, world athletics, how would you change TV broadcasting and the coverage of track and field?
Well, I think it's clear that this pandemic has ushered us into a new way of broadcasting, a new way of television. If anybody's watched a lot of programming that started to come back, whether it be the NBA or NFL or what have you, there are a lot of programs that are now being called on a remote basis. And what I mean by that is that the producer, the directors, the play-by-play and analysts are somewhere else. They're at a studio. They can even be at home, right, with the right equipment like we're doing right here. And then the reporter, somebody like me, may be on site, or maybe there's no reporter, but most times there are. I think that is definitely going to be the new way to do it. And if you can do that, remote broadcasting, bringing the cost of actually producing an event down, then maybe we can do more events. Okay, so if I was talking to Sebco about what they're doing with their dollars for events, I would say, let's embrace this remote broadcasting platform, okay, and get a production company in place where we can call events remotely, and have more events that are actually coming across the multiple platforms that are being called remote, which means we can now bring in more meets. Let's just go across the United States, and you can help me with this too. But you think about the Mount Sac relays, you think about the Penn relays, you think about Texas relays, you think about other major meets. Let's look at some of the major high school meets, Texas State Championships, or maybe the California State Championships. You can put in place, what you do is you send the cameras there. All right. You send the camera operators there, and you may set up some basic audio equipment. And if you're going to have a reporter there, you'll need that for them. And then the rest of it, you call from some particular home base. You need an important person to make sure that your research material is on par, and then you set those up. But I would do that, and then the next thing I would do with embracing maybe bringing more U.S. meets in like that, I would spend more money and focus on the Caribbean, because there are some great meets down there that don't get the type of coverage that they should have. You agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it kills me sometimes to see some of the meets we've missed and some of the performances, you know?
Yeah.
And it was there have been these boutique little pop-up meets that have been happening over the last few months. You know, Jesse Williams with Sound Running, and then Chris Chavez just did one down in Texas. How do you think we should cover meets like that? How should we deal with the pop-up meets? Or do some of them deserve terrestrial TV coverage?
Why not? Why not? I don't see why not, because, you know, every product that we put out in terms of the sport of track and field, or athletics as it's known around the world, doesn't have to be on the level of the Olympics. Okay.
Yeah,
it just doesn't, or Olympic trials or national championships. You know, show the meet for what it is. Bring together a format, advise some of these smaller pop-up meets, or even some of these smaller countries about the value of having programming within a 2-hour window, or maybe even a 90-minute window, right? And then structure the meet so that you have strong events to start and always as to end, and not too much time in between. So you can advise people on how to structure a meet for television, the television window, and put together these 90-minute windows of track and field, do it remotely. And the other thing that I didn't get to mention is you're going to need in some of these locations proper Wi-Fi. You're going to need a strong band to be able to bring those signals out. Sometimes a lot of it's going to be based on that. So you could maybe spend some money. You look at Jamaica. You know, I've done the meet in Grenada, which is just unbelievable, 3 or 4 times. And other places that want to have meets and give them the proper bandwidth they need, right? And then set up maybe a Caribbean package to be able to bounce around with cameras and that basic infrastructure equipment, but all of it going back to a central location to be able to for those meets to be called. And then now you have a way to structure bringing more competition in, more meets. And if the meet is a smaller one and it's only got an hour worth of programming, why not? Why not? Let's more track and field with this using the budget in a smarter, more effective way across the globe.
You've done 10 Olympics now.
Yep.
Do you have a favorite?
Well, that's tough too, but I love them all. I love them all. Everyone's so special. Yeah. Everyone's so special. Summer and winter, they're just beautiful. But I'd have to say my first in Sydney with Kathy Freeman in that moment probably still at the top, you know. I remember Sam Flood allowed me to audition for the 99 Worlds in Seville, Spain, for this analyst position when Craig Masback had moved out and he was going to run, I think he was going to run USA Track and Field. So I auditioned and 2 other people did as well. And I got the spot as an analyst there for that. And then I had to re-audition for the same spot for Sydney. So going to Australia was just amazing. Amazing. You know, I'll never forget flying to LAX. And then there's that remote terminal back behind the other terminals. And there were 2 747 jumbos, Qantas, sitting there waiting on us. This big spread in this hall with all this food and drink and music and Olympic banners everywhere. And everybody's powwowing around and toasting and having a great time. And then we all boarded on these 747s. And one by one, we took off and we went out over the Pacific, you know, and 13, 14 hours later, we landed. And it was like magic. You know, we landed in Australia, and that was the beginning of my Olympic experience as a commentator. And the Kathy Freeman moment still is the pinnacle when she won that race. And Tom Hammond and myself and Carol Lewis were in the booth. And I learned a lot of valuable lessons at those games, just about the value and importance of writing. Tom Hammond taught me that the value and importance of knowing when to be quiet. We call it getting to the shut up, because when she crossed the line and that stadium, 110,000 people, was just exploded. And they were going from shot to shot to shot to shot. Tom put his hands up like that because he knew he had 2 young, eager commentators who wanted to say something. And he put his hands up and he held them just like that.
Wow.
Probably 45 seconds. And he's like, don't say anything. There's nothing you can say. As they cut from Kathy Freeman to the prime minister, to her mom, back to her peeling her hood off, back to the stadium. You know, and just going back and forth. And he finally put his hands down to say, okay, now we can say something. So it's a great lesson, I think, for anybody who wants to be a journalist. You may have a hot mic in front of you, but you need to know how to use it and be ready to say things that are important, of value, that add to the story, and know when not to say anything, because we've got pictures and sound that sometimes tell all the story, everything we need to hear.
I like that.
Yeah.
What is, we were just talking about Tokyo.
Yeah.
One of the things I do each week with one of my writers out of Oxford is we do our little Tokyo watch, and each week it's kind of changing.
Mm-hmm.
I share with you that I think we're getting closer to it actually happening. I think it's going to be very different, though. How would you tell our viewers, where do you think Tokyo is going to be? Will there be an audience? Will there be a limited audience? Do you think it's going to be unlike any Olympics we've had in the past?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay.
I think we'll have an audience, but I think it'll be limited. If I want to look at it from a global perspective, from a health perspective, I think the release of this third vaccine is a big deal. One shot Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a big deal. So I think it gives people who are willing or want to take the vaccine a better chance of having more people vaccinated and there in Japan, and of course those who will be coming. I think that's the biggest fear of any country. I don't care where you are, is that people will bring something into the country. And so I believe we've had enough time now for folks to set up infrastructure to receive folks that hopefully are negative and or have vaccines. Testing protocols upon arrival, being able to take them to hotels or dormitories or whatever it is that have been set up to manage this protocol to keep people safe. But I think that we'll have a limited amount of fans in the stadium. This is just my guess. I don't know this for sure. I think that people have done a great job around different sports to, you can hide seats, but that's not really what you want to do. But you might be able to put in like a false crowd, with maybe the cutouts in certain sections just to kind of fill it in. Even pump in sound. There's all kinds of things you can do, but I think it'll happen. And like I said, I think the world needs the Olympics to happen, and I believe they can pull it off safely. And for us as broadcasters, I mean, the protocols for COVID are going to be very, very strict. I'm sure, very strict, because I've lived through multiple games where we had very strict security policies. I remember the first mag and bag I saw at our Athens hotel in 2004. It was like an airport mag and bag. I was like, wow, this is a trip. But that's what we needed to have done. We'll make it happen.
In 2022, we're going to have a Commonwealth Games, a European Championships, as well as a World Championships. And the World Champs are going to be in Eugene. And people are starting to get excited about that. What do you think about a World Champs in Eugene?
I love it. Love it. I love it. I'm so excited about that. Hayward Field is I don't know what words I could have to describe for that. We used to joke about the broadcast booth that we had at the old stadium. So I don't know if you ever came up there, but you go up there, right? The poop deck,
Oh my gosh. I just blew my mind how you guys dealt with that. Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you something, Larry. I mean, when you go up there first, it's a shock. You walk up, you go to the top of the stadium inside, and then you walk out on this catwalk, right? And then you walk into this caged in thing. We're kind of hanging from that old wood overhang, and you go and you go, wow, this is wild, but they set up the monitors. Our NBC technicians were just fabulous. Set up the monitors and all of our replay machines, and Otto's got his the thing he can draw on and what have you. Walter's down there, got his spot with all his information. Walter Murphy, the great Walter Murphy. But the view up there was just unmatchable. You could see the whole venue. You could see outside the venue and see the mountains. And it took you about one show to say, okay, it may not be so clean up here, but this location is awesome. And you catch all the sound off of the roof coming in when the 800-meter runners were coming up to, Barnes throwing up the home straight, Nick Simmons and those guys to try and make the team. All that crazy stuff was just, I'll never forget it. But this investment in the new stadium that Phil Knight and others have led the way on is just fantastic. And to have the World Championships for the first time come to American soil is huge. And so I can only hope that we'll have more major events there. There is a built-in fan base in Oregon that knows the sport, loves the sport, and will always support the sport. There's some places, and I am not pointing fingers. Don't try to mince words with me, please. Don't send me no messages on this. I'm not downgrading talking bad about any place. But there's some places where you hope that people are going to show up and know. They'll try to manufacture some excitement. It's built in, it's authentic in Eugene, Oregon. There's nothing like it, nothing like it.
I agree. I think the other one that I would love to see, though, is when they did the meet down at Stanford, when, as I called it, pre and exile. They did a good job, and I think we got to find the right places, like you said, to put it on, because that enthusiasm is infectious. It just I hate to use that in the time of COVID, but it's just it's a good it's a good thing. I want to talk to you about some of the topics of the day right now, and ask how you put them in perspective.
Okay.
The first one is the shoe controversy. And, I remember an interview with Ron Clark, the guy set 35 world records, and he talked about in 1965, he broke 28 minutes for the first time at the 10,000 meters on a dirt track in Turku, Finland. The only way he got the race on there is he had agreed to race the next day against fresh people in a 3K. So 25 laps and and I'm just like going, okay. And he said that if he'd had a Mondo track, he could have probably run 27:20. And Jamie Webb, I think one of the young British runners, did a piece in the British newspapers, and he said the final thing he was going to say about the shoes was, do the shoes help? Yes. But he resented media saying the shoes are everything. And he said, compare the shoes to going from a dirt track to a Mondo surface. How are you playing with the whole shoe thing? Because Nike's got them, Adidas has got them, New Balance has got them. The other guys are going to have stuff like this too. How do we put this in perspective?
Look, man, I think sometimes we almost make too much of all this, because technology is always going to advance, move forward, and people believe it's going to give them an advantage. We went through that in swimming, right, with the suits, right? So, I mean, I was in the barbershop the other day. We were talking about basketball in the NBA and just some kind of, younger guys in there and some old head guys in there. We were talking about stuff. I said, well, think back to the day when Dr. J and all the guys were doing what they were doing in Chuck Taylors, which are flat, zero support. And they were jumping through the roof, right, with all these incredible moves and plays, what have you. But you advance yourself to today and all the technology that people have now with Kobe and God rest his soul, and his shoes, and LeBron and everybody. And the fact that the athletes are completely built differently. Look at the reaction of Tiger Woods and his horrendous accident, and we hope he gets back. But the reason those guys were all wearing red shirts on Sunday is because they understand how he changed the game on every level in the world of golf, right? And the money came because Tiger was not only a great golfer, but a superior athlete, in the gym, lifting, strong, and he brought best technology out there, right? He changed the game. He changes the ratings, which changes the amount of money that's flowing into the sport. So I think that, with the shoe deal here, I don't know. I just think we have to figure out a way to make sure that to embrace the technology as it advances, because it is what it is. I mean, the eras are different, right? As long as everyone has the opportunity to the same technology, which they could consider to be an advantage, I think that you have to sort of just figure out a way to embrace it. I do understand, though, the different shoe companies are trying to do different things to give them a bit of an edge or advantage. I don't know how you police that. I don't know how you police that. I just think, technology advances, and we just got to figure out how do we keep the guardrails up so that it's basically fair for everybody.
You talk about shoes, and the story, the Chuck Taylor thing brings up a quick story.
Yeah.
I was raised in St. Louis. My first indoor meet is in 1973. In East St. Louis, High showed up, and these kids are all in Chuck Taylors. And the thing I remember is the anchor had this killer afro, and he put his pick in it just before he started, right? But we were on a flat armory surface, a basketball surface.
Right.
And this guy slid around the turns, and he popped a 50.4. I mean, they ran like 324, and I'd never seen anything that fast. And I needed Chuck Taylors then. I just thought, God, if he can do that, I can run a mile in those things, man.
Right. Right.
And it's just like, so it's just the perspective, I think, that makes it. We've had some fun performances this season, Comment about Ryan Krauser. What do you think of Ryan?
Well, first of all, what a great guy. What a grounded young man who has just got some superior physical talent. Is clearly a hard worker. I mean, he showed us some workout videos of him, lifting, and we ran some of that during the meet. I mean, it's just crazy what he can do, but he is a physical specimen. And it's just in one of those moments in time where he is going to throw far, right? So when you walk out, and I'm telling you, it is to me indicative of what's going to happen at the Olympics. Here are people who've been grounded for a whole year, schedules all out of whack. You don't know what's going to happen. And finally, the Olympics are delayed and everything is just out of whack. You're trying to keep yourself healthy. The first chance you get to compete, boom, there it goes. First throw, world record. Come on now. And he almost, I think he may have thrown past the previous world record once or twice more that day. So I just think he is just in one of those special moments in time that athletes will go through where they'll be able to do great things on the biggest stages. And so for him, I think the key is to stay safe, stay healthy. He and his dad went through the food poisoning deal on our last meet. They were sick as a dog. Did you see him show up? Did you see him show up?
Yes. Oh, yeah. And I loved your line about the little container there, too.
Yeah. So we saw the commercial before he went out. He was looking around. He walked across the track. That garbage can was over by the fans. He walked across the track and picked it up and brought it over. And of course, by the time I got there to do the interview, it was a little dirty on the one side. I'm like, oh hell, don't put your hand on that side of it. Put it right here, And so,
oh my God.
but he's special. And again, I'll say it just like I said, Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt was such a special specimen in terms of an athlete, but a great guy. People thought Bolt's arrogant. No, he's not. He's very confident. Great guy. Yeah. And Ryan Krauser is a great young man. Excellent.
All right, we're down to 5 minutes. I'm going to give you 5 athletes. You got 5 words. Okay. Usain Bolt.
He changed the room. Bolt would walk in the stadium and change everything. Yeah.
Allison Felix.
Oh, boy. One of the classiest athletes I've ever met.
Carl Lewis.
Global icon that was misunderstood.
Nick Willis.
Defying grandfather time. Yes, defying father time. Just defying.
Yeah, I like that. Ryan Krauser.
About to experience beast mode at the right time.
Shawnee Miller-Weibo.
I really got to think about this one for a second because
it's just.
I would say elegant, speed, classy Bahamian.
Louis, you're awesome. I thank you for what you bring to the sport. What's so cool is how much you enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I got one last thing to ask you. Tell me about the tie. Why did you? I mean, I love it. I just think it brings you up. Is it just something you've done for a long time, or how did you start with that?
I was on the fence. I was on the bubble about whether or not to wear the tie today for this, but I said, well, we're on RunBlogRun. I'm going to just come in as an athlete. I do lift in the gym. Cool. I'm not running anymore. But the bow tie was something that I just wanted to change in my look. That was probably 5-6 years ago. I just wanted to change in my look. And so I kind of was considering the bow tie, and it was right around the holidays. And I said, okay, I'm going to order one online. And I ordered it, and it came in a box. And I went upstairs in my house, and I started to work with it. And for about 2 hours, I was up there screaming. There were some words that came out of the bathroom that weren't so nice, sweating, the blood running out of my arms as I was trying to figure out with my computer up, trying to look at these different videos, of how to tie it. It was very hard, but I was committed. And once you get it, you get it. It's like riding a bike. And I just love the look. It's like look, when you get comfortable doing what you're doing, and you have an understanding or a good feeling about how to prepare and go deep, what else can we do to help accent what you do? And I just thought I wanted to change in my look. I love the bow tie. And there have been many occasions, especially during the NBA playoffs. I don't know why. I'd have somebody run up to me after the game, I love the bow tie. I said, you wear them? He goes, no, I thought about it. I pull it off and give it to him. I must have done that 10 or 12 times. And I love that, especially kids. I was here. Now you're in the bow tie club. All right.
That's cool.
So it's a lot of fun. And I enjoy the fashion side of it. I've got a son who's a graphic artist and paints and does a clothing line. So he kind of helps me. Julian helps me with
awesome.
different things and advice and ideas on it. But I just love all that. Love putting it all together as part of that deal that you're going to roll out the door and go to work and try to look sharp as you do your best job.
Final question. I forgot to ask this.
No problem.
5 words, Grant Holloway.
Oh, I try so hard not to use cliches. So that's why I want to say the new guy on the block, but that's a cliche. Young speed that will have longevity. I can do better than that. The next sprint game changer in hurdling. He's gonna do big things for a long time. And he's another great young man as well. He recently came on my esports.
I love that one. You did a great job.
Did you listen to it?
Totally loved it, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, he came on my esports podcast and we talked about his love for gaming. And he told me, he says, listen, whenever I get ready to get on the plane, he goes, any athlete in track and field is going to have their spikes and uniform in a bag on the plane with them. But he also puts his game controllers in that same bag as well, because esports and gaming is very important to him when he travels the world. So,
well, we're going to put those links up on the piece with this. This will be up in about 10 days. Lewis Johnson, thank you so much. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun, Socialing the Distance, and we featured Lewis Johnson today, a 10-time Olympic Games sports commentator, and one of the people who really champion our sport. Lewis, thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate you. You as well. Much respect. Thank you so much. Continued success.
Thanks, my friend. Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder, RunBlogRun. This is our program, Socialing the Distance. Today we featured one of the people I worship, Lewis Johnson, 10-time Olympic Games sports commentator. This guy is all class, but he's also about, if you want something, you go for it. And he was a walk-on at University of Cincinnati. He, I think in his junior year, he competed in 1988 in the Olympic trials. He spent 7 to 9 years in Europe as a rabbit and a pacemaker and worked at all the big meets. And you take all those things and you put it together. And the first real track event that he did was at the Goodwill Games, where he and Ian Brooks commentated the 10K race walk, which came down to this incredible last lap, and they put that out on CNN Sports Moments, which was totally cool. The person who encouraged him and actually talked to the producer about using him was Craig Masback, who is an NBC announcer and former top miler. But Lewis gets it. He has an enthusiasm and a love for sports. He understands the complexity of the situation. He's doing some incredible programming in electronic sports now, too. He's getting it in the gaming area. The interview we did with Grant Holloway was fantastic, so please make sure you check that out. But we had 40 minutes with him, I think 43 actually, and it's one of the best interviews that I've ever been able to do. Lewis was fantastic, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you pass it around. There's a lot of lessons to learn about track and field, covering our sports, how sports commentating should be done. Lewis Johnson's a class act. And Lewis, thank you for coming on to Socialing the Distance. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun. I want to let the programming speak for itself, so take some time and enjoy it and savor it. Lewis Johnson is an incredibly enthusiastic person, and he loves what he does, and he does the research to make it look great and feel great, and he's a storyteller. That's what it's about. Again, Larry Eder, RunBlogRun, Socialing the Distance. We featured Lewis Johnson today, a 10-time Olympic sports commentator, total class act, real champion for our sport, champion for global athletics, champion for sports in general. So if you like RunBlogRun, like us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you love us, subscribe on YouTube. We have about 369 videos and audios from 2020. We have over 2,500 videos and audios since 2010. You'll be able to find something that you like. Thanks to Mike Deering for producing Socialing the Distance. Have a great day.